Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. So I've got a variety of guests that come on that we'll talk about really specific subjects of, okay, here's exactly what's going on right now with a court case or, an audit of some sort. I've also got people that I like this having these big picture discussions with. And one of those people is Aaron Brickman. Now, he hasn't been on in a while, but he was on before talking about some stock market stuff, but also the much bigger picture of that. And so today we're going to be getting into a discussion about everyone in America is focused on the day-to-day. It's the Fauci hearing. It's even the election. These are significant events, but there's something much bigger that we need to focus on. And so Aaron's going to walk us through what that is and why there is a massive, massive storm coming that he's extremely concerned about that very few people are really focusing on. So folks, please enjoy the interview with Aaron Brickman. Mr. Aaron Brickman, it's been a while. It's great to have you back on the show. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Seth. This is awesome. It's always a privilege, and it really is a privilege and honor. I watch most of your programs, and I love what you're doing. I love. I know you're reaching a wider audience and just continuing to grow. And thank you again for having me.
Of course. So, as usual, there's about a million things that we can talk about, but I want to hand it to you. You're somebody that you're following a lot of different aspects of what's happening in the world. You've got a great blend of faith and spirituality that guides what you're focusing on, what you believe to be important. So you're one of those guys that periodically it's good for me just to say, what's on your radar right now? What do you focus on? What do you think is the most important? Is it the Fauci show trial or is it something else? So I'll go ahead and hand it to you then, just kind of see what you want to talk about. Because I know beforehand you mentioned, there's no time for pleasantries anymore. We got to be pretty matter of fact and pretty frank with these discussions, and I agree, and I look forward to that.
Yes, thank you again. I've probably been interviewed maybe over the last couple times, many times, maybe over the last 2 years, and it really started. I don't know if it was right before or right after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and at the time there was a number of podcasters that wanted me to get pretty excited, like, dun dun dun, here we go. And I was pretty relaxed, and I was relaxed because I understood where that was leading. But again, that was just the opening act, and it's not like the movies. You don't go to the end of the world and wrap it all up in 90 minutes. Wars take decades, and there's plenty of warning. And you just slowly creep into the abyss. It's not like you just jump headlong. And so, for over the last 2 years, I'm definitely a macroeconomics guy. Stock market cycles, definitely historical cycles, political cycles, revolutionary cycles, war cycles, and in my approach, and so I'm really watching geopolitical events. And I think I had stated to you at one point that I consume a lot of information a day, whether it's books or journals or articles, interviews. And I'm not overwhelmed, and I'm able to absorb a ton of information because I kind of know how to catalog it, meaning my paradigm is the fourth turning. We're in the fourth turning. We're in the back nine, which is we're going to go into the intense part of the storm. And everything that you're either interviewing people about or that we're consuming in the news is just the details. It's the details, and a lot of people get sidetracked by the details or start unraveling that specific detail and not understanding the context, the historical context, or even the context within today's world, what's going on. So how do you connect the dots? And then once you connect the dots, what do those dots mean? And then where are those dots in history? Have we seen this before? Or is this something new? And so I'm going to be very matter of fact today because this isn't 2022. We're way farther down the road. And there's some things that the audience might disagree with me on, and we'll agree to disagree. But I will stand by my statements that I'm saying right now, or I'm about to say, and we'll let history judge the accuracy of what I'm about to say. And again, we all see in part, right? Like Paul wrote in the Bible, we're not, I'm not clairvoyant, but hopefully God's given us some wisdom to look at these events in context and make some accurate projections. So with that, that's kind of like a long preamble. But with that being said, everything right now, the only topic that matters is war. That is the only topic that matters. Everything else is a subfolder of that. And that war at a spiritual level is war on humanity. Okay. It's war on the family. It's war on your body. It's war on the church. It's war on your spirit. What's going on in the schools is war on the children's minds and their moral value. Like it's war. Okay. Even DEI and all the green politics, all of this is war on humanity. Okay. And I know you've had discussions on transhumanism and where they want to take humanity. Part of what is confusing the public as we head towards war, and I'm talking about physical kinetic war with the Russians and Chinese and Muslims, is that I keep hearing a number of conservatives not understand. They're confused on how we're going to win this war. How does the West, how does Biden, how does Macron in France, how do these leaders actually think they can engage the Russians and the Chinese in a nuclear conflict and win? They don't. That's not the goal. The goal is the destruction of humanity. It is literally the death of billions of people. Like I know that is hard for the average listener to understand, that this is very demonically inspired. As you all know, if you get into the history of the Third Reich, it was so satanic at its core. I mean, it was, and we didn't know that in 1939 or 1943. But post-war, it's documented, it's historical. It was, the satanic roots were deep within the SS and within the party. Okay. And it literally was trying to do genocide. Okay. We had never seen that face of evil. That was something that even the average GI fighting in Europe could not comprehend what the face of evil was until they liberated those camps. And I'm telling you, the West does not understand, it has not seen this face of evil that is about to rear its head. We have been told, Neil Howe, William Strauss wrote the book The Fourth Turning. We don't have to discuss that. That's required reading. Okay. And they've been very accurate they were very accurate in their predictions, and we're here. And now that we're here, and war is at the doorstep. It's at the doorstep. Colonel McGregor's interviews will I'm not going to cover what his knowledge is. You got to listen to Colonel McGregor. What is taking place in Europe in time? We could talk for 5 hours, Seth, about troop movement in Western Europe. We could talk about all the red lines that NATO has crossed. The Russians gave 2 years ago. I'm not talking about red lines for conventional conflict. I'm talking about red lines for nuclear attack. We are closer to nuclear war than the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay. This is Europe is openly talking about war with the Russians. Germany is calling for 900,000 reserve troops to be activated. We could go on. Taiwan is now mining the waters off its shores for an invasion. We could do an entire program on the Mideast with Iran and the in Israel and Hezbollah and Hamas and Lebanon and in Egypt now having 2 soldiers shot by Israeli IDF troops last week. Like, these are theaters of World War III. It started in World War II, started in Europe. It went to North Africa and the Mideast, and then it opened up in the Pacific. These are the 3 theaters you're now watching open up. Okay. It is not a probability of whether World War III is going to happen. It is an absolute, I will make a statement right now. You are going to see it. And it is not 5 to 10 years off. How can I say that? I can say that because of the cycles that we could get into that are within the 4th turning that pinpoint the timing. We could talk about Martin Armstrong and his cycle prediction, which has been dead bang on for 30 years. That's the reason they put him in jail, is they wanted access to the source code. This is a guy that predicted within weeks the fall of communism. His cycle had a massive turn on 9/11/2001, years in advance. And he has been pounding the table saying war when you get to the summer of 2024. And he was saying that 2 years ago when everybody thought it was going to happen then. He said no, he was worried about the summer of 2024. I can tell you, I just had the luxury of watching his London conference. He is not pulling punches. The war is about to begin. The United States, he officially put out last week that the United States will fall in 8.6 more years. We have 8.6 more years. That is how long it took for Rome to fall, was 8.6 years. Okay. That's a 1,000-year empire that literally goes into phase transition in the last 8.6 years. What's phase transition? Phase transition is likened to boiling water. How long does it take to boil water? Well, it takes quite a couple of minutes. But in the blink of an eye, there's phase transition where it goes from a liquid to a gas. Okay? And that's what we're in right now. Is this thing is boiling in a blink, in a flash. Okay? It happened in World War I with the assassination of the Archduke. By the way, they just attempted to assassinate the Prime Minister of Slovakia. Slovakia was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. You're even seeing the same events rhyme through time. World War I started with that assassination and officially was declared in June, July of 1914. World War II started on September 1st, 1939. That is not the reason that Martin Armstrong, he's making predictions for other cycles, but we're even entering the historical window, okay, which is the summer months for the outbreak of World War III. I have argued for 2 years that World War III started 2 years ago, okay? And it's mission creep, and it's different spheres of combat, different theaters that are slowly opening up, like the Israel, like the Pacific, like Eastern Europe. Okay, but the Russians, we have passed all the Russian red lines. Martin Armstrong is adamant the United States will cease to exist by the end of 2032. That's not my words. That is Martin Armstrong's. This is the guy that OPEC calls during their meetings. This is the guy that the central banks of the world, including the Swiss bank, the Japanese central bank, the Chinese central bank, our Fed, calls because he knows, because of his cycles.
Folks, perhaps you'd agree with me when I say that over the past 5 years, the mainstream healthcare system's credibility has plummeted. Alternative healthcare systems that aren't beholden to medical consensus or big pharma are on the rise. Sweetamine is time-tested and proven to boost your life with better health. It's one of the leading products that helps with inflammation and daily aches and pains. Just because you get older, it doesn't mean you have to feel old. And folks, did you know that most of the diseases that make people sick and die these days are rooted in chronic inflammation, oftentimes due to glycine deficiency? So, sweetamine is composed mainly of the amino acid glycine, the nutrient that the immune system uses to regulate inflammation. So, with once daily sweetamine, most people feel the reduction in pain after just a few days. So, I challenge you to the 12-day sweetamine challenge to fight inflammation and take control of your health today. So, folks, buy sweetamine online at sweetamine.com or call 855-GET-SWEET. That's 855-438-7933. And make sure you use promo code SETH, SETH, to get a nice discount on your purchase.
When I hear conservatives continue to push the goal line, they continue to move the goal. So in 2022 at the invasion, it was like, no, we got 3 to 4 more years, 5 years. Then we get to here. Now we're like 3 to 4 more years. Like we're constantly moving the goalpost. Okay. But there's going to come, look, they are now getting ready to introduce the draft in Europe, both men and women, through the age of 60. Now, maybe that's a good thing because maybe that means that the entire population will revolt against this nonsense. If it's just a bunch of 18 to 24-year-olds, I think that the most people would still be passive. Maybe they won't be if everybody is getting pulled into this conflict. I will tell you, as a matter of fact, they are quietly preparing that in the United States. Okay, it's already in the works. I had a conversation with a gentleman who let's just put it this way, almost 30 years Navy. Okay. Basically had achieved the rank of admiral. All right. And what he is telling me is the same thing that the cycle guys are saying. Okay. That they want more time, but they're not sure they have any more time. Okay. So when you hear, and I know that you're privy to military officers as well. So it's not in the civilian world. And when I was in the military, there was all kinds of things that were going on that my parents didn't know about, the average person didn't know about. Okay. And that's the way it's supposed to be. But when you get this late in the game and everything on the news is telling you, but they're not telling you. They're giving you the hints, but they're not connecting the dots for you. I'm just very adamant right now that I believe that the war kinetically will start in less than 18 months. Less than 18 months. And it could be 30 days from now. The Russians have told we've passed all the red lines. They just pulled Scott Ritter's passport to prevent him going to Russia to try and downplay this, to try and diffuse this situation that's going on with the ramping of the military. So let me be specific. Let's get into timing of the fourth turning. The fourth turning to me has always been problematic because it's a generation. It's a 20-year window. Okay. And that's awesome before you and I understood about the turnings. Okay, so when we first read the book, we're like, oh my gosh, now we can dial it in. Well, okay, 20 years. So, okay, we dialed it in, but that's a long time. You know, if you're lucky, that's a quarter of your life. Okay. And so, and I've known that the war, and it's always an existential crisis, right? I've known that that was going to be in the back half of the fourth turning. I mean, that's kind of how you end it. Okay. But the timing has always been, was it 2022? Was it COVID outbreak in 2020? Like where, and then you're hearing Marty talk about all the way into 2032. You're like, well, if it's 2032, maybe we have till 2028, 2029 before it goes kinetic. Okay. It's always been very nebulous. It's good if you don't, I mean, it's helpful to know about the fourth turning versus not knowing, but you don't dial it in. And there is a cycles guy by the name of L. David Linsky that I discovered his work about a month ago, and I've been deep diving it. And I do believe that he has the secret to the timing. And what he discovered was the Mars Uranus conjunction in Gemini. Now, for everybody that just heard me say that, they probably went right over their heads. It's now into astro stuff, and so we can tune this out, and it's not gonna have any relevance. Okay. My retort to that is God hung the stars, and in Genesis said they were for signs and seasons. Signs, they are signposts. You can get into the math, you can get into the orbit, all that stuff. So, for example, Uranus's orbit is 84 years. Well, that's interesting because all the fourth turnings are around 80 to 90 years. Okay. So he started looking at the exact configuration of the planets and what's going on for the triggers, for the trigger of war, whether it's 1940, 1861, 1776. You just start running this backwards all the way to the founding of Jamestown. Okay. We could do 2 or 3 hour program on the exact timing, but to suffice it to say, the start dates of war, let me make this point for your audience. The start dates for war is historically inaccurate at best. The more you start studying World War One or World War II or the Civil War or the Revolutionary War. So, for example, they'll tell you that the Revolutionary War began at 2 time frames, either the signing of the Declaration of Independence or in April of 1775 when shots were fired in Lexington. But if you go back and read your history, the British declared martial law in Boston in 72. Okay. The Intolerable Acts were then passed where troops now were entering Boston and being quartered in your own home. They were not allowing people to be tried in front of a jury of their peers, in front of the local judges. The British started appointing their own judges and then even hauling colonialists back to England to stand trial. Like if you're in that time period, you're already in it, is my point. Okay, when that final shot, that first salvo is fired, where everybody, even the idiot Baker now knows you're in a war, that's not what we want to wait for. You fast forward to the Civil War. So they're going to tell everybody again. So when you get to the Civil War, they're going to tell everybody that the war started in April 1861 when the Southerners basically fired the first shot. Really? Well, let's go back to 1857. 1857 is the Dred Scott decision by the Supreme Court that says that blacks in the United States are not citizens and do not have any rights. That sent the North into a tizzy. Okay. You then go into 68, where you have the Lincoln Douglas debates. Lincoln loses the Senate race in Illinois. That sets him up to run in 1860. But what happens in 1859? 1859 is where John Brown and a bunch of abolitionists attack the Federal Weapons Depot in Harper's Ferry, and the general that is in charge of putting down and defending that is a general by the name of General Lee. Okay? We don't record that the Civil War starts there. Then you get into 1860 and the presidential election, and Lincoln wins the presidency by 39% of the populace. Okay, you can see if you're in that moment, the reason I'm taking time to go through history is if you're in that moment, you already, all the signs are around you for what, whether it's the Revolutionary War or the Civil War, of what this war is going to be about. Okay. And it's for the historians to arbitrarily assign a start date, is my point. But there are years and years that are preceding the actual conflict, and you know what that conflict is going to be about. Okay. Life in the colonies was forever changed. You're not going back. Also, what was being contested at that time was the loss of justice within the court system. Fast forward to the Civil War, the events preceding it, loss of justice within the court system. Loss of life, loss of liberty. Look, antebellum South was destroyed, never to be seen again by 1865. Socially, it was gone. Let's go to World War II. I ask people all the time, when did World War II start? And I always get these, well, December 7th, 1941. Well, that's if you're the Americans. When did it start for the Polish? Right? It's going to be September 1st, 1939. Well, what if you're the Chinese? You got to go back into the 1930s and the occupation and what the Japanese are doing. Or what if you're in Spain or Italy, right? And the civil war that was going on there, that was literally the testing ground between the communists and the Nazis. Okay. The point of all this is that you know what the war is going to be about years in advance. In this is my frustration now. I continue to hear people talk about praying that it doesn't happen. And look, I'm a man of faith. You're a man of faith. I understand where prayer is, but you praying that it doesn't happen, to me, the Christians in the colonies in 1776, I'm sure were praying. I'm sure our Christian grandparents going into World War II were praying. Like, that is not a strategy, is my point. It needs to be a part of your daily life, but that is not. You've got to understand that most of the time God takes you through the fire. He doesn't pull you out of it. Okay. And now we come to this moment in time. What are we saying? Are we saying a lack of justice in the judicial system? You think that's new? What I'm saying is, what Martin Armstrong is saying is, when you come on the other side of this, whatever life you have now is done. You will never see it again. I know those are strong words, but somebody has to look at history and where we're at and tell you you're not 9/11. On the day of 9/11, you're not going back. When COVID broke out and everybody wants to go, you're not going back to that world. Okay, there are moments in history that are like lines of demarcation, and they are phase transitions, and you're never going back. Okay, and I know that I know that people don't like to hear that. I know it's hard for them to understand, but there is a line that we're about to cross, and we are not coming back to this time. And it is going to be, um, we're not prepared for it. We're not prepared for it physically. We're not prepared for it mentally. We're not prepared for it spiritually. We are not prepared. In right now, in the final months, or maybe we have 18 months. Now is the time to literally go to the gym, start watching what you eat. If you need to lose weight, lose weight. If you need to return to God, return to God. If you need to get right with your family, get right with your family. Like, if you need to start being financially responsible, I don't know what you're waiting for. Like, there is no more time. There's not time for distractions. There's not time for games. There's not time for petty jealousy and arguments. And let's argue about building 7. I don't want to hear about building 7. Like we are so far down the road from those type of arguments in rabbit trails. So I'll say this lastly, that I believe Trump, let me make a couple of statements. So here's where I think we're going. I think the financial system, and I've been trading the markets for 25 years. I'm trading with guys that have traded for about 45 years. And we all commiserate and laugh and are in awe. We have never seen such a perversion of capitalism, a perversion of markets that has been growing increasingly over the years. But I'm telling you, Seth, the last 2 years is we're beyond 1929 valuations. We're beyond 2000 and it's so normalized now that when I say it, people are like, "What do you mean?" Like, one company, Nvidia, it has accounted for 50% of the S&P 500 gains for the year. Do you understand that if Nvidia crashes, if anything negative happens to Nvidia, then the entire market goes with it? And people go, "Well, that won't happen." Really? Well, Nvidia has their chips manufactured in where, Seth? Oh, Taiwan? Oh, yeah, that might be a problem. If that was a cryptocurrency chart, we know what comes on the other side of it. That is, in math, we all learned, that is a parabola. What goes up must come down. That is a vertical ascent. That is identical to Cisco in 2000. It's identical to the NASDAQ in 2000. All right. But hey, it's AI, and that's the new flavor of the month, and nothing bad could happen with that, right? Okay. So here's my predictions. The financial markets will come apart at the seams over the next 2 years. I expect at least a 70% drawdown in the Dow and the S&P 500. And for anybody that tells me that can't happen, 2000 to 2003 bear market and 2007 to 2009 bear market were 50%. 50%. And we're going into World War III. At the outbreak of World War I, the stock market began to crash, and they immediately shut the exchange down for 4 months. When they reopened the exchange, it crashed. When World War II broke out, the market crashed. Now, what comes after that is different. Okay. So what I'm saying is we will have a stock market crash. When the war comes, we will have a stock market crash. And it will be at least into 2026, at least, maybe even in the spring of 27. It will be horrific. massive job losses, massive. Then the markets will begin to recover and take off as the war intensifies. And that happened in World War I and World War II. So the backdrop over the next 2 years is we're almost out of time. The financial system is already on borrowed time. I do not believe, and this is going to get us into the election, I believe that Trump is going to win. I believe he is going to be the next president. Regardless of all the chicanery and shenanigans and all the Biden, he's going to be the president. And he is going to preside over a complete collapse in the financial system, incoming war, both with the deep state. If you think what they've done to him and what we've endured in this country for the last, since the assassination of JFK is bad, wait until the final battles that are awaiting the deep state and his administration. Okay? They are not going quietly into the night. I also believe for the people that think that Trump is somehow going to avert World War, I think he could very well get us into it. Well, let me rephrase that. The generals will have this war already keyed up. Okay. The Pentagon, go back to JFK. Go back to what they were trying to get with Eisenhower. Go back, like the war is coming, is my point. And for conservatives to go, no, Trump will avoid it. Okay. Like, it didn't matter who was elected president in 1860. It's coming. It doesn't matter who is sitting in Philadelphia in 1776. They're signing a document and the war is going to begin. Okay. And that's my point in the conservatives putting their faith in one man, that somehow he's going to avert historical cycles and crisis. Okay. He can be used by God to navigate this nation through those crises, but to put the weight of the world on him and say somehow he's going to avert historical crisis periods, don't put that on me. Don't put it on you. Like that. That's come on. So I think that, and I think that the world will be in war no later than 27, no later. And it could be as early as this year. I mean, it's coming fast. And for the people that think that war is going to be fast, instantaneous, all of a sudden nukes are going off in 1,000 cities and it's the end of the world. That's not history either. History is, that's easy. That's your easy way out. A fast war is always your easy way out. What's hard is the perseverance of the saints. What is hard is year after year after year. Okay. And that's what all wars historically have been. Way longer. Look at the war on terror that we just got. 20 years. Vietnam, right? World War II, Civil War. Like they're always at least a minimum 5 years. Minimum. Sometimes they go on 1 or 2 decades. So when Martin Armstrong is saying it's about to begin and it's at least 8.6 years, he's right there in the historical average. And that, I'm not prepared for that. I'll be honest with you. Because we've all been conditioned by watching these movies that, oh my gosh, in 90 minutes, somehow the whole thing is resolved, whether positive or negatively. And it's a lifestyle. What these wars are is they fundamentally alter society. And you don't do that in 5 minutes. Okay. They're altering a generational mindset. That takes time. And it takes attrition. Whether I find it phenomenal that today is June 6th. You know, we didn't coordinate this to be talking about this on June 6th. But 80 years ago, one of the greatest battles. Like I've said it on your program and I'll say it again. The reason I'm doing this, the reason I'm passionate about this, and the reason that I'm being very direct with you today is because I'm not going to walk the streets of heaven and apologize to the founding fathers. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not having that conversation with our forefathers who gave everything so that you and I could have the freedom that we have today. I'm not doing it. And so what I mean by that is it's time for all of us to stand up and be light. It's time for all of us to speak our mind. We don't have the luxury to acquiesce and to be silent anymore about anything, especially things that we know are morally reprehensible. Okay. And we keep thinking we'll just be quiet, we'll go along, we'll get along, and somehow it's going to get better. In my lifetime, it's never gotten better. We just are continuing to just step towards the abyss. And I think that and maybe that's why I'm being directed. There's a time when people just have to stand up and say, we're done. You're not going to take us to World War III. You're not going to destroy the planet. You're not going to eviscerate the Constitution and eviscerate our freedom and eviscerate, and where are they at? And everybody's like, oh no, it's going to be the ballot box. Really? Okay. You tell me how that works out. Seriously, in 25, 26, 27, tell me how much change was made at the ballot box. Okay. That's a starting point. We were given that, thank you, God, from our forefathers, but that's not a magic pill. That's one of the many responsibilities we have as citizens. But it doesn't start and stop there. And even on the right, that seems to be like we've forgotten about social contracts. We've forgotten about what our role and responsibility is as men and fathers and husbands and like what. You understand I'm just very disconnected with the right and what the whole strategy that's going about. Like they're not. It seems that the conservatives are always fighting yesterday's battle. The last person that showed us how to do this, there's three people in modern history. Gandhi brought down the British Empire, okay, by nonviolent means. Shortly thereafter, Martin Luther King Jr. revolutionized this country and propelled his people forward through nonviolent means. We could go back 2,000 years and Jesus and the revolution he kickstarted through nonviolent means. All of them set a vision. What could life be like for the Indian people, for Blacks in the United States, for humanity? We haven't had that person in the United States since Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan in 1980, right? Morning in America. He began to speak to the American people and set forth a vision and call forth the best that was in all of us. Okay. If we're going to continue to talk about policies in debate legal rulings and laws, I'm telling you, we're going to descend into madness, because that's ultimately what it's not about. It's about the gift God's given us that our forefathers fought for, and it's calling forth and reminding every American of truly what we once were and what we can be again. And until we get men and women speaking like that, as far as I'm concerned, nothing is going to change. We're just going to cycle the drain and continue to debate the election and cycles and policies, and that doesn't inspire anybody. It doesn't inspire me. I don't know if it inspires. And that's what we're getting out of leadership.
At the very heart of our democracy lies a principle we hold sacred: free speech. It's the cornerstone that supports every freedom we cherish. Yet, in today's digital age, discussions about our wealth, our rights, and our future are being silenced or overshadowed in mainstream narratives, leaving many feeling voiceless in conversations crucial to our financial independence and security. This is where wealth protection research steps in, armed with a mission that's never been more critical. Wealth protection research is not a financial advisory firm. They're defenders of free speech committed to giving a voice to the silenced. Wealth protection research tirelessly seeks out financial experts. These are the voices that challenge prevailing narratives, especially as we navigate the uncertainties of the 2024 election. Wealth protection research has created a 2024 election wealth protection report. This free report highlights the three best ideas for protecting and growing your money heading into the 2024 election. It contains ideas the mainstream media won't even touch, and listeners can get it completely free. So text ideas to 76626 to claim your free copy. If you believe in the sanctity of free speech and the importance of financial freedom, then act now. So text ideas to 76626 to claim your free copy of this 2024 election protection report. It's time to widen the scope of what we're told, to hear the ideas the establishment does not think you can handle, and to take control of our financial destinies. So folks, today, text ideas to 76626 to claim your free copy.
But what I'm calling for, what this rant is about today, is that you're a leader and I'm a leader, and anybody can be a leader if they just stand up and speak truth to power. And it's speaking truth to power. We're not talking about grabbing a gun and going violent and all the nonsense. We're talking about literally not going quietly into the night. We're talking about speaking to evil and calling it out. And that's the problem in the United States. We've normalized this behavior, and everybody's afraid to call it what it is. Okay. And they just keep moving the bar. We just keep moving the bar, and we just keep waiting. That's my rant for the day, Seth. I'm sorry. That's
it's important, and without going into further details, because I think it's important to end at the right place as well, these discussions, and capture the momentum of the conversation where it leaves you to a place that people are reflective after hearing this. And what I appreciate with you is that you see this 100,000 foot view. You're not getting lost in the day to day, and this makes a lot of sense to me. I know that you're a student of war. You're a former special forces. You're very well connected with people still active and retired, and not just the military, but also Pentagon level, stuff. And that what you're seeing, it's almost like, we'll go back to mid Ohio where I grew up. Everyone's, in Ohio, that they're arguing at the town council over whether or not to build a new bridge. And there's this heated discussions, and the people that are running for things. And there's a giant like F5 tornado coming. And that tornado changes every aspect of the city council. The bridge won't even matter when the tornado arrives. And that's what you're seeing. I mean, you're seeing through looking at patterns, through looking at cycles, through looking at signs. I mean, even one sign I'll pull up here, right? How Ukraine is now using our U.S. weapons to strike inside of Russia. This is significant. So what I'm seeing is that you're recognizing all the different factors they're showing and telling us that war is coming, and real war. Not just the 5G psychological warfare, which is Operation Mockingbird, and it's that's here. We know that. But actual real war in ways that changes the face and the landscape of the entire earth. And I think that, well, of course, I don't want that to happen. I also agree with you that there are cycles of history, and there's cycles of history that even Trump himself can't change. Even we, the people, can't necessarily change. So we have to rise up within that. So I think that your message today is important. And it's the kind of message I think is really important to have, because it's not focused on the trivial day to day. What Marjorie Taylor Greene, look what she said to Fauci, and look at this, this person, this reporter was roasting Dan Crenshaw, and all that stuff it's going back to the analogy. There's a tornado coming, and people are arguing over, the decorations on the table at the entryway to the city council meeting.
You've got NATO telling you that war is coming. The head of NATO is telling you. The prime ministers of these European countries, the United States, the generals, the individual generals, whether it's in the Pacific theater or in the European, are telling you it's coming. Okay. And yet the American people, I guess they're deciding not to believe the generals and the leaders. I don't like it's crazy. And then I know people will listen to this broadcast and go, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Fine, stick around. I mean, like cycles, you cannot alter cycles, whether they're economic cycles or historical cycles. But what you can do, and this is where God has given you individual choice and freedom, you will be held accountable for your decisions and for your choices made within these historical times that you find yourself in, right? So I don't get to choose my parents, but I can honor them, I can obey them, I can respect them. I might not agree with them all the time, but there's a way that I can behave and I should behave. And I think that that's what my call to is look, we need to be grabbing responsibility. We need to be taking it upon ourselves right now. We don't need to be pushing it away. In fact, we're in this mess because we've abdicated our roles and our responsibilities for generations, not for 5 or 10 years, for generations. We have handed it over to the professionals, the professional healthcare, the professional lawyers, the professional politicians, like the professional teaching class. Like the minister, like we're constantly pushing all areas in our life back to the professionals instead of taking responsibility. And it's one of the many reasons why we're in this mess. And it's going to come. That's part of the fourth turning is where all those institutions fail. They all fail. We'll go through education, healthcare, legal, the justice, the election. Like all the institutions fail. And you're left with yourself, your family, your faith, your community. Maybe if you built some relation, like that's what's left. Okay. And so the question is, are you building those? Because if you're not building them now, you might as well stay asleep. Seriously. Enjoy the rest of the sleep. Don't even bother waking up. Seriously. It's we got people that want to argue about COVID. Like 4 years later, we're moving on. Like, I don't know what to tell you. We can debate you can get locked up into that debate, but we're moving on. Like history is progressing. And that's what a lot of the American people are failing to comprehend. And then it's the speed, right? It's the speed of everything. It's like a quickening. It's because it's energetic fields and you're headed to that breaking point. And when you start feeling these events, continuing to accelerate, that is your warning. That it's not just going to dissipate. Something's going to break, and it's going to break in ways that you and I don't understand, and it's not going to be what you're looking at. So, for example, back to the Civil War and all those wars, like that flashpoint, nobody could predict the flashpoint. That's not the point. You don't get bonus points for a prize for predicting the flashpoint. That's why I don't care about getting locked into the details, even right now, right? It's going to be impossible to predict the day and the hour and what the flashpoint is. But you can certainly look around you and go, this is the topic. What do I mean by the topic? The topic in the United States over the next 8.6 years is going to be our role in the world among the BRICS, the Russians, and the Chinese. Are we going to share that role, or are we going to fight an existential battle with them? And then it's the complete evisceration of the Constitution and the justice system in the United States. Everything else falls into one of those main topics, okay? And each of us have been called to maybe fight in different domains. So people they're fighting against trans, okay, that's great. I'm not telling you to abandon that. I'm just giving context of what all these other battle spaces are really about. And to your point with the tornado in the town, that's exactly right. Look, if you're in combat, you do have battle spaces, and we've got to take that village, and that village leads to that city, and that city, that country, and you've got to be very in the game and paying attention to the details to take that. There's theaters of battle within theaters of battle, right? But look, if they're going to nuke the entire country, did it really matter? And what's your plan B? How are you going to fall back out of that and not get just lured in? And there is a luring into battle spaces by design, right? And I think that that's part of what is happening, even with the American people, is they're being lured into to deep into this morass, right? You follow where I'm going with it? They're being lured deeper into the countryside, deeper into these domains of battle space. And when they should be withdrawing, okay, getting perspective and understanding exactly where the danger is and where there's the real battle. What is the real battle over? Yeah, somebody could. Anyways, I'm adamant, Seth, that we had time. The last 4, 5, 6, we had time. 2016 was a reprieve by God, because we were close and we got a 4-year reprieve, but I don't think we're getting a reprieve. I think time is almost up. Yeah. But what do I know?
If not now, then when? Aaron, it's been great speaking with you. I appreciate you coming on. Important messages, and we'll have to do an update at some point, as the year unfolds. I think it'll be very eventful. I hope a lot of this doesn't come to pass, but I think that that's not within my own control. So thank you for being a voice of wisdom and discernment in these topics. It's an important conversation we just had.
I appreciate that, Seth, and I appreciate all that you guys are doing, and really enjoy your shows as well.
Fantastic. Well, take care, and God bless, Aaron. All right, folks, I hope you enjoyed that interview. I'm not going to be jumping into a very, very important interview that's very short. As you know, if you've been watching this show, one topic I've been consistently covering is the financial battle between the BRICS nations, right? Primarily, Russia, China, India, some of these powerhouse nations, in addition to all the other nations that are joining, Middle Eastern countries, Turkey, etc. What they're doing in their economic war against the Western financial system that is fundamentally tied to the U.S. dollar, the fiat currency that we know of as the U.S. dollar, that has maintained its dominance in the world as the world reserve currency, primarily because it is the petrodollar. It's a 50-year-old agreement that basically says, hey, Middle East, if you trade oil in our U.S. dollar, we'll protect your crimes and we'll protect your oil routes, and we'll do all kinds of stuff with our military, which we're funding by overprinting the dollar insanely, that is propped up because you're making people trade oil in the U.S. dollar, creating global demand for it. It's all supply and demand. It's how currencies work. Something absolutely significant and historical has just happened. And this is such an important episode for you to tune into, folks, because just yesterday, right on Sunday, the 50-year agreement that Saudi Arabia, one of the world's largest oil producers, had with the United States, the 50-year petrodollar agreement came to an end. Now, the question is, was Saudi Arabia going to renew that? And they said no. So the petrodollar as we know it is officially over. Now, these things don't happen, and you don't see instant effects where, say, you go to the store tomorrow and you can't buy a loaf of bread with $100. No, it's not like that. But this is kicking off a series of significant events. Now, simultaneously, what we've had happen is that the BRICS nations have officially announced the development of their new currency, which is also massive. And the fact that this is happening within a couple of day window of Saudi Arabia rejecting the petrodollar is absolutely significant and not just a coincidence. You've also got the development of Bridge, which we're going to be getting into today, which is a global payment system that will help basically tie in all these central bank digital currencies, potentially backed by gold, which is also significant. So, folks, this is going to be a wild episode, and the ramifications, this might seem like some financial news, right? Might be like, oh, okay, you're talking about what's happening with the dollar. This right here is what underpins almost everything that we know in our lives. The success that we've had here in America, the beautiful, lavish life that we've lived here, we want for very few things here for most people. Even the people that are on poverty level, we're still, a lot of them still have cell phones and TVs and everything. We're not, living in a third world country, though it feels like it sometimes. But what we've achieved here in America is so tied to the fact that our dollar has had global demand because of this petrodollar agreement, right? So this is what has propped up our currency. It's what's allowed the Fed to print untold amounts of US dollar. It's about what's allowed us to keep raising the debt ceiling because there's just been this demand for the US dollar. Well, folks, this is a major, major blow to that demand. And honestly, and we'll get into it in today's episode, but I would expect that we're going to start seeing countries really starting to back away from the dollar, start dumping treasuries. And what you're going to see happening at the same time as that is our people and our government freaking out. Absolutely. Now, one thing I'll tell you is that if you go to CNBC, right, one of the biggest financial news websites that's talking to your average mainstream person in America that wants to understand what's happening in the markets, guess what's not anywhere to be found on CNBC? Nope, there's no mention of the petrodollar. There's no mentions of BRICS or no mentions of the BRICS currency system or Putin. So you can see that most people in America, unfortunately, are going to be blindsided by this turn of events because people aren't being told what's really happening. And what's really happening in this global financial system is absolutely significant. So, folks, joining us today is my good friend Kirk Elliott. Please enjoy tuning into this interview because it's going to be a very important one. Kirk, it's great to have you back on. And boy, is there some big news for us to discuss today. So thanks for being here.
I mean, monumental paradigm shifting things that we're going to talk about. I mean, it's I don't know, quite honestly, Seth, if I've seen any financial news that ultimately is going to have a larger impact than what we're going to talk about.
I agree. And me saying that is different than you saying that. Someone who's lives in the world of economy and has a PhD in economics and understands this exactly. So let's just jump right in. You and I have been talking about BRICS, the petrodollar, all this for quite some time now. So let me just read this because the news speaks for itself. Saudi Arabia's petrodollar exit, a global finance paradigm shift. So, and this is just out today. It says the financial world is bracing for a significant upheaval following Saudi Arabia's decision not to renew its 50-year petrodollar deal with the United States, which expired on Sunday, 9 June 2024. So this is exactly what we've been talking about, that the petrodollar, the world, the dollar as the world reserve currency has its value because of global demand, and global demand is because it's the petrodollar. And we've seen a lot of these countries, especially in the Middle East, shying away from the dollar, opening up oil and gas trades in, Chinese yuan, the ruble, the Indian rupee. But that's huge news. What do you make of this, Kirk?
So the reason why I think this is so massive is look throughout time. I don't think you and I can remember a time when every single year at the end of the fiscal year, the US government didn't come up for a vote to raise the debt ceiling, right? So easy decision for politicians to make because we have a printing press that has a built-in demand for our currency. Doesn't matter if we treat it like monopoly money. It doesn't matter because we could print, and there's always going to be demand for US dollars because oil settlements are traded in US dollars. That's the petrodollar. And you go back to the 1970s when it became the petrodollar, and it was used as a mechanism to provide stability to the global marketplace and oil settlements, right? That's why they did it. That's also why you have a reserve currency, is for the same reason. So transactions between countries have some kind of stabilizing force or else it's just willy-nilly all over the place. So what currency are we going to use, right? So that's why you have a reserve currency, and that's why you have a petrodollar. So pretty much in one fell swoop, the U.S. lost both of them this year, right? So the reserve currency status, it's not like they've actually renamed a Bretton Woods 4 or something like that and named it yet. But for all intents and purposes, with 70% of the world's population, part of the BRICS nations, and they started to trade in their own currencies back and forth to de-dollarize the world. Well, now taking it one step further, they want to have their own common native BRICS currency, right? And to actually amplify matters, it's like you can't just come up with a currency and say, we're going to be the world's reserve currency. No, the US dollar still was, right? So they have to eliminate the dollar standard. That's what this decision just did, which is why I say it's so monumental, because now when it comes time to raise the debt ceiling, they're going to have to think twice. It's like, do we raise it? Do we devalue the dollar even more? What's that going to do for international demand? Boy, we're going to have to raise interest rates because that's inflation. What are we going to do? Right? Every time they have a spending bill, some kind of an omnibus spending package, anytime they decide they've got Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, women, infant, children program, food stamps, any entitlements, or Department of Defense spending, or infrastructure, or you name it, we now have to think about it, which they should have always thought about it. I mean, let's be real, but when you have built-in demand for the currency, politicians simply just didn't for decades. The world is about to change with this pendulum shifting moment. And this is, I believe, when Putin said back in August of last year that he's going to de-dollarize the world, it's the BRICS objective and it's irreversible. I think he knew that this day was coming, right? Because they were talking in the BRICS nations about adding United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia, Argentina, Iran, right? They were talking about that. And so now, as of last week, Turkey wants to be admitted into the BRICS nations. Well, Turkey's possibly the largest Muslim population country in the Middle East and part of NATO. What's that going to do to NATO if Turkey leaves? It's like, oh boy, this is going to be wild, right? So for all intents and purposes, the BRICS nations added 6 of the 9 largest oil producers in the world. If they get Turkey, they add even more, right? And so there was this article that I saw, and this is all pertaining to the Saudi Arabia piece that you just talked about. So when you look at some of these stories, some of the things that are happening, the Fed on, let's see the date of this. So on May 30th, the Fed admitted that some countries are moving towards gold. Okay. So it's like, but it's only a few, not a big deal. Which 4 countries were they referring to? China with 1.4 billion people, India with 1.4 billion people, Russia with 144 million, Turkey with 85. So that's 3 billion people. That's 37.5% of the world's population.
Well, look at this. I'll read this. It's almost comical. It says the decline in the dollar preferences of a small group of countries, notably China, India, Russia, and Turkey. What a small, it's not like, Uruguay and Madagascar. And I mean, these are those 4 countries, China, India, Russia, Turkey, it's almost half the world's population. It's insane. But I'll throw one more thing in there just to add to the overall insanity, is that right now, just checking, you go to CNBC.com, which arguably is one of the main financial hubs for your common retail investors and your people that are looking to understand what's happening. Not a single mention that I can find, just in a quick look on the entire homepage, talking about how Saudi Arabia has declined to renew the petrodollar agreement, or not a single mention of the new BRICS currency, which we're going to talk about, which is also massive right now in the news that matters. It just shows you is that they're hiding this from people. The folks that watch this show, they know what's going on, but the average person, you say, are you following what's happening with the bricks? And they're like, yeah, they're using lumber a lot more in building. They're not using really brick anymore. And it's like, most people just don't know. But the folks that are watching you and I, of course, like they're smart people, but just, it's insane that you have the Fed downplaying the fact, like, again, going back to this, that, well, the decline in the dollar preferences of a small group of countries, half the world's population base almost, and the large increase in the quantity of reserves held by Switzerland explain most of the decline in the aggregate dollar share of reserves. I mean, this is de-dollarization. This is the beginning of the end of this dollar-based fiat system that they've been using to absolutely destroy us and keep us enslaved. Sorry to steal away from you. I just had to jump to that.
No, it was a great jump because, okay, so this is step number one, right? So they're saying that they're not going to use dollars in exchange for oil. So what are they going to use, right? That's the second part of the equation. Well, I would say since Saudi Arabia is now part of the BRICS nations, they're either going to use the yuan or they're going to use a common BRICS currency, because that's the end goal here, right? And when you look at statements that Putin's making, even statements that the BRICS nations are making, they're ready for their own common currency. But until they get to that point, they will probably use the yuan, right? Because maybe it's not ready yet, maybe it's coming. But either way, it's away from the dollar, pushing demand for currencies in the BRICS nations up. And you can see this pendulum shifting from the West to the East. And here's the thing. I don't think we're going to get it back, right? So even here's the ugly reality. Even when Trump comes back, what is he going to do if 70% of the world says we're not using the US dollar? Not even Trump could get that back. Now, what Trump would be able to do is amazing things and start to actually have reason with our spending and do it within the constraints of what we should have been doing for decades. And it's like, hey, if we don't have the revenue, we're not going to spend it, right? You can make America very profitable and prosperous once again, even without a reserve currency. I mean, look at some of these countries like Switzerland and others that are very prosperous countries. They just don't carry a lot of debt. Right? And so we can do that. But I think our days are numbered, and it's almost like having the reserve currency status is a curse because at some point, the rest of the world, you lose favor. The rest of the world doesn't want your currency because it's not like America has been the reserve currency since the beginning of time. No, it's been since 1944. Prior to that, it was the British sterling pound. Prior to that, you had the Dutch currency, the Portuguese currency, the Greece. I mean, it never lasts. And it's almost like a curse because the country that has the reserve currency will print more of their currency to establish the monetary supply needed for international demand. And that leaves you with a bunch of debt. And when the rest of the world says, we don't want that anymore, you've squandered your time in the sun, what are you left with? A bunch of debt. Right. So here's where I think we are headed towards that. And China really, really, really wants what we had. And that is to be the global manufacturing, economic, political, military superpower of the world. And having the reserve currency is part of that. And I think they just got it. Right. For all intents and purposes, they got it with 70% of the population trading in their own currency. And now Saudi Arabia getting rid of the dollar is the petrodollar. It's now going to be the petro yuan. Or if Russia has their way, it's going to be the petro BRICS currency backed by gold. I mean, it's because they want to peg a barrel of oil to 1 gram of gold in Russia. That's what one of their Russian main economists had said. It's like, this is their goal. Decouple oil from currency altogether and simply couple it with gold. Now, who would that benefit? That would benefit the countries of the world that own massive amounts of gold, like China, that have 30,000 tons of gold backing their currency. That's who it benefits. If you're trading oil and it's pegged to gold, that would only benefit them. See, there's masterful type thinking behind some of these decisions that they're making in the BRICS nations. And sad to say, we're losing that battle.
We completely are. Absolutely. And it's he who holds the gold makes the rules. And we're seeing that. So who does it benefit? It benefits the sovereign banks, the countries that are buying up and holding gold, which we've talked a lot about. It benefits the companies, the individuals that have bought gold and silver. They've been patient. They're waiting. That see the storm coming and see what's on the horizon and know how vulnerable the U.S. dollar is, especially with the amount of printing and the amount of debt that we're in. It's like it's almost like something you see it spinning faster and faster and faster, and you're just waiting for the whole thing to come apart. You know it's going to happen, or blowing a balloon up. You know it's going to pop at a certain point. And so a lot of people have been really patient. They bought gold and silver 5-10 years ago, and they're waiting and waiting, but they're smart because they know what's coming. But what's crazy, if you look at the timing, so June 9th, the 50-year petrodollar agreement ends. Saudi Arabia declines to renew. And at the same time, and this is what this is June 7th, BRICS it officially announces independent payment system. So this is absolutely insane timing. So here, this article, this is on Watcher.guru. It says, in what is a landmark development, the BRICS Economic Alliance has officially announced that it is launching an independent payment system. Indeed, Russian President Vladimir Putin confirmed the work being done on the project at the SPEIF 2024 conference taking place in country. So he disclosed that the alliance is, quote, working on our own independent payment system free from political pressure, abuse, and external interference. Conversely, the discussions of integrating a BRICS-centered payment system have been a focus of the bloc for much of the last year. So this is huge. This is huge. The fact that this is happening, they're master strategists, right? The Chinese, the Russians, they're master strategists. The U.S. should be, but we've got, we won't get into what's going on in the United States. And so you can see the same timing of, they know that the petrodollar agreement is coming to an end. It's ending. They've probably known for months that Saudi Arabia was not going to renew, right? And now just happened to be coincidentally, here's their new BRICS payment system that is probably very close to launching, which a lot of people are speculating will be backed by gold or tied to gold in some way, or tied to other commodities, oil, silver, etc. Yeah. I mean, this is significant. This is absolutely significant.
Massively significant. And the Bank for International Settlements, Seth, has been working on Project M-Bridge. I mean, anybody can Google it. Just look up Project M-Bridge, the letter M in bridge for Bank for International Settlements. That's the mechanism that's going to tie all these central bank digital currencies together. Specifically, yes, that particular one right there, they're ready for financial integration between countries, including central bank digital currencies backed by gold. They're figuring out the exchange rates and how all these different digital currencies can come together. And I think the next logical step is, remember a couple weeks ago when the Fed announced, or the House basically said, no, we're not going to allow central bank digital currency issued by the Fed. And everyone was cheering about how amazing that was. It's like, doesn't matter. It's going to be issued by the IMF or the Bank for International Settlements or the World Bank, some kind of global entity. And that project there proves that they want to pull all of these together under one central clearinghouse. And it's weird timing that you would have Saudi Arabia, Putin's comment, the BRICS nations, and Project M-Bridge all happening within a week of each other. And I think that's not a coincidence. And I think, how do you prepare yourself and protect yourself against that juggernaut? Right? Because that's big. These are tectonic shifts in the global monetary system. And that's why gold and silver makes so much sense. I mean, literally so much sense to get out of their digital world, to get out of that enslavement is what I would call it, when they can cut you off from buying or selling if they don't like you, or they don't like your ideology, they don't like what you're doing. I mean, that's, and whenever anybody can tell you what to spend and with whom and when and why and how, that's enslavement, right? So you get out of that by having something that's tangible, having something that's real, having something that's not digital, having something that's not a certificate, just a random worthless piece of paper. And I think that is our exit strategy out of this kind of a unified ledger system.
Well, it's also uncoupling from the dollar. It's understanding what gives a dollar its value and what takes away the dollar's value. And if you look at the overprinting, you look at what's happening with BRICS. I mean, the U.S. dollar is a runaway train, and it's speeding up faster and faster, and it's headed towards a cliff. And there's no, like, when you piece all this together, right? Socrates talks about how it's very hard to arrive at absolute truth. So what you do is you look for patterns. You look for patterns that appear to help show you what is true, because truth will manifest as truth in all the different scenarios you look at it. And so what we're seeing with this is that we're seeing everything pointing towards the dollar having hyperinflation as the more and more countries around the world start dumping treasuries because they've lost confidence in the dollar, because they've lost confidence in the United States under the current administration. And you see where all this spells, what all this spells is a collapse, right? Extreme financial difficulty for the dollar, and wherever it's basically injected itself. And so it's almost like people are on that train and it's speeding up, and there's no conductor, and you see the cliff in the horizon. They're like, you know what? It'll be okay. It's always been okay. I'm just going to keep doing things as I've always done it. Keep things just as safe in the 401k and the stock market. Hey, it's doing great. It's a willful blindness, I think, of what is actually happening in the world. And I think what you and I have talked about, you want to see a pattern that shows what's really happening, that helps point towards the truth. This is it. I mean, we're really rapidly heading towards that cliff of true de-dollarization and true potential, I would say, hyperinflation, which is what it looks like.
I would say so.
We say de-dollarization, but what it really means is hyperinflation until the currency dies. And yeah. So anyway, gold and silver. So this is the other train, right? This is the slow moving, reliable train. It's not heading towards a cliff. It's heading towards a mountain of probably levels that we haven't seen before, which we're already at right now. So if folks want to talk to you specifically, Kirk, someone I trust personally, about gold and silver, what's that process look like?
So one of two ways to get in touch with it. First, you can either go to the link goldwithseth.com, or you can just simply call us. So if you want to jump to the head of the line, I suppose, 720-605-3900, and just say Seth told you to call. Then what we'll do is you'll talk to one of my amazing schedulers. They will ask you a few questions on what you want to protect, right? And get you an appointment with one of our consultants, where we'll dig in deep. We'll hear your fears. We'll listen to your concerns, your goals, what you want. Do you want growth? Do you want income? Are you close to retirement? Are you young? So then we can craft a strategy for success moving forward to get out of the path of this hurricane, using precious metals to do so. That's what we'll help you with. And it's a really easy process. We want to make the transition easy, the burden light. Just let you know what we think. And then your decision after that is, hey, Kurt, go take a long walk off a short pier. I'm not interested. Or you can say, that sounds amazing. It's totally up to you. Our goal and mission and calling is to just equip you with what you need to make a decision for yourself.
I'll also just say, as we finish up, that not all gold companies are equal. And I used to work in the metals and jewelry industry, and there's a lot of corruption. And there are a lot of companies, and I've talked about this with you off camera, where you've revealed showing me invoices for different companies that people have sent you. A lot of companies and precious metal companies are targeting individuals or targeting conservatives that understand what's happening, and they're selling gold and silver at insanely inflated rates. So just a word of warning: if you have someone that you trust, great. If you don't, though, make sure you find someone you can trust. I trust you. That's why I work with you. That's why I'm confident sending even my best friends and family to you, because I trust you. And that's key. So, Kirk, thanks again for coming. Pretty significant. I'd say it's a historical announcements that we've been reviewing today. I'm looking forward to reviewing this and continuing to follow this story, because to me, this is the biggest story, I think, potentially of our generation, like the implications
I
of
agree.
this. And thank
It
you
is.
for being a knowledgeable guide on this journey.
You are welcome. It's my pleasure.
All right, man. Take care and God bless. So a lot of folks are not a big fan of all fruits and veggies. Some taste great, but many don't. And you have to admit, when you're in the produce section, all those vibrant colors of fruits and veggies look so good. Balance of Nature explains that all those colors you see in the produce section equals nutritional variety. Different colors signify different key nutrients. So if you only eat your favorite one or two veggies, you're missing a whole world of vital nutrients. And that's why you should eat a big variety of fruits and veggies. Well, I decided it was time to start taking Balance of Nature's fruit and veggie supplements each day. And get this, some Balance of Nature customers say the fruit and veggie capsules taste so good, you can actually chew them. So I gave Balance of Nature a try, and I'm glad I did. Are you ready? So whether you order online or call them direct, you must use a promo code SETH to get this special offer of 35% off and free shipping on your first order. As a preferred customer, call them at 800-2468-751 and use discount code SETH, or order online at balanceofnature.com. Use discount code SETH to get 35% off and free shipping on your first order as a preferred customer.